and get that going. So we've got that all happening. So it's just us girls here right now. So we'll
talk
wait
to each
until,
other.
yeah, we can talk to each other. We can ask each other questions. Oh, people are starting to join us now. Okay, so as people are coming in the room, I'll fill a little bit of airtime so that nobody misses, although we are recording this. So anybody who's coming in with us right now, if you have to leave or step away, no worries. We are recording it so you can see it on our YouTube channel, or I am actually going to pop it onto our Facebook page too. So hi, Denise. Hi, Darby.
Hello.
How are you both?
I'm great.
Good. Thank you.
Denise, you're doing good?
Yeah.
Yeah. Ready for some fun tonight? Excellent. Just real quick, I'll fill a little bit of time to give people some time to get us joining here. First of all, Denise, what part of town? So all three of us are in San Diego County right now, which is really unusual for this. And it's the Zoom thing. We've been having people all over the country. So we got some homegirls here right now. So Denise, what part of town are you calling in from?
I'm actually in Mission Village, which is in between the stadium and Montgomery Airport.
Oh, okay. All right. And Darby, you're out in the San Diego State area, is that right?
Yeah, I live in Rolando Village, so it's right near SDSU.
Okay, SDSU does it. Okay, yep.
Yeah.
And then I'm up in the Warwick. I'm up in the North County. I actually live in the Carlsbad, the Costa area. Warwick's in La Jolla. So for those people who might be joining us that don't know about Warwick's, is located in La Jolla, San Diego, California. So I'm assuming everybody's coming in from who knows where everybody's coming in from. You can let us know in the chat if you'd like to. So we may have people from who knows where. But if you haven't already ordered Darby's book from us, if you have ordered it, she's going to be coming in and signing books. We'll be shipping out those tomorrow to those that ordered it to be shipped. And if you ordered it to be picked up at the store, you might want to wait till the afternoon to come and pick it up to give yourself, make sure that you don't make a trip that it's not already signed yet. But if you haven't already, I'm going to put in the chat the link that you could easily order that. And it just came out on Tuesday. So it is like hot off the presses. So easily could ship that to you. Or if you're going to order it online from us, you can pick it up at the store. We'd love to see you in the store. Still lots of good books there. It didn't get too picked over. There's still some good stuff at the store there. So parking in the back, which we always, La Jolla can have a little bit of issues with parking. So you can just park in the back and pop in and pick up Darby's book and whatever else suits your fancy there. Tonight, Darby and Denise are going to talk for about 35-40 minutes. If you scroll over your screen, you're going to see a Q&A little button there. Go ahead and pop your questions in there. I'll be monitoring the chat too, but it's easier if we just pop any questions that you might have into that. I'll pop in with those at about the 35-minute mark, just so that to give Denise a little bit of a break, maybe, right? So with that, I'm going to start off and introduce these two lovely ladies, and then I'll pop off and let them have their conversation. So Darby Kane is a former trial attorney and #1 international bestseller of domestic suspense. Her debut book, Pretty Little Wife, was featured in numerous venues, including Cosmopolitan, The Washington Post, The Toronto Star, Pop Sugar, Refinery 29, The Skim, and Huffington Post. A native of Pennsylvania, Darby now lives, like she said, in California here in San Diego with us. And I love this, runs from the cold. Although it's been kind of chilly here for us Californians. I mean, which is not writing suspense. She can be found watching suspense, thrillers, and mysteries. And she's here tonight to talk to us about, as I said, just released on Tuesday, The Replacement Wife. Joining her is Denise Davidson. Denise is a freelance writer with the San Diego Union Tribune, specializing in author interviews. That we love the author interviews that she does. So thank you, Denise. In another life, she was a news research librarian from 1995 to 2009 and worked for the city of San Diego as a public records manager. She volunteers with the Cheetah Conservation Fund and the San Diego Humane Society. Did you come to the event that we had with Rexa and Rita?
No, I wasn't able to.
Oh,
yeah, darn it.
I was freaked out about that one. I was like, holy cow, giant cheetah came walking through my eyes like, I'm out. But people were fascinated by that.
Yeah.
It was just it was, there's some old photos. anyways, I digress. She divides her time between reality, reading, just a bit of denial, and a martini when life calls for it. I love that. You two have a great conversation. We'll see you in a little bit.
Thank you.
Thank you, Julie. And I'm so excited to be here tonight to celebrate your new book, Darby, The Replacement Wife. So thanks to you and Warwick's for this event. I'm going to jump right into it. So can you please give us an overview of what the book is about for those who haven't read the entire book yet?
Yeah, you haven't read it? It came out Tuesday. It's not like
Well, the entire book. I figure we're going to get to chapter about 4 and then come and watch you here. So
there we go. I like that. I like that. It's about a woman named Melissa, and Melissa lives like, she has like a nice life, like nice husband, nice kid, lives in a nice neighborhood. She's had some things happen in the past, but she's getting back on her feet. And her best friend was engaged to her brother-in-law, and she goes missing, or in Alyssa's view, she goes missing. In her brother-in-law's view, she took off, we got engaged, she's flighty, she left. So the book is kind of about what would you do if you thought that a family member might be a killer, especially if your brother-in-law has a little bit of a history of having problems with women.
okay, all right. I read the book and I absolutely loved it, and I
Oh,
love the
thank
pretty
you.
little wife. So I'm super excited. And yes, yeah, I got some good questions for you. So can you talk about some of the real life influences that inspired The Replacement Wife?
There are, I watch a lot of true crime, like Dateline, 48 Hours, the Netflix documentaries, those kind of things. And about a year ago, I seemed to watch one after another where like a wife would be missing, and then you'd find out a previous wife died. Like one fell down the stairs, one died in a bathtub. And I remember thinking to myself, how often does this happen? Like it seems like such an extraordinary thing. And I have 2 brothers, and I just think if their wives started dying, I would say, oh, wait, something's not right here. So I wanted to kind of go at it not from the guy who might be killing the women in his life, but from somebody very close to him, who's attached to him, who loves him and believes in him, and kind of how her entire world unravels because she has to decide, am I going to upend my entire life? You know, my husband's his brother. Am I going to upend my entire life, to try to figure out what's going on? So that was one of them, kind of the series. And, also the other one, I think most people are probably familiar with the Scott Peterson, Lacey Peterson story. The pregnant wife vanishes, I think, on Christmas Eve. And he was convicted of killing both the baby and his wife. And it turned out that he had a girlfriend who didn't know he had this other life. And it got me thinking about that story, that case has been in the press a lot lately because Scott Peterson's sister-in-law is really, really pushing. She does not believe that he did it, and she's really, really pushing. And I thought, kind of, what an amazing thing, like to have that level of faith in someone when literally it feels like the entire country hates this guy, right? And to imagine to have that kind of level of faith. And then what if you were the girlfriend? What if you were Amber Fry? And who are you? Those kind of things. So it's not based on the story, but it's, I think the writers take a lot of times these kind of things they see, and you take them and you kind of, okay, what if I look at this a different way? And what if I go from the sister-in-law's perspective? Is she going to be a believer? Is she not going to be a believer? What would happen in the family I create? So those were kind of the 2 major influences that ended up with The Replacement Wife.
Okay, fabulous. And then will you discuss some of the top level themes and or ideas you wanted to explore with the replacement wife?
I think with both the replacement wife and actually with Pretty Little Wife, there are kind of some recurring ideas, which is kind of what role does trauma, sometimes unexamined trauma, what role does that play in our life about who we are and how we view the world and how we view certain things. And I'm a lawyer. I don't practice now, I write full time, but I was a trial lawyer for 12 years. So, I have in my mind how the law works or how the law should work. And I think what we've kind of seen is that the law doesn't work the same way for everybody, right? And what some people view as justice is not what other people view as justice. So in this is kind of the ideas of vigilantism and revenge and like what that does to people, how healthy it is, how accepting we are of it. Like if we don't like somebody, are we a little more accepting of it? And I think we'd all like to think of justice as this bright white line, and it's very clear. And I think the reality is it's this kind of gray space, right? And how you view justice and what you view as just kind of moves depending on what the circumstances are. So both of the books actually play with those and are also written where I grew up reading mystery, suspense, and thrillers. I loved it. And my mother was an avid mystery and suspense, right? So there were hardcover, any James Patterson book you wanted there, Harlan Coben there, right? Like anything you wanted was right there. And so much growing up, except maybe Patricia Cornwall, but so much growing up was kind of male focused. Even if the women were the survivors in the book, it was from the male killer and the male detective. And I think there's been kind of this extraordinary thing happening in thrillers where these amazing female authors are writing from a slightly different perspective, that women aren't just the girlfriend of or victim of or sidekick, where they are more the kind of heroes and stars and sometimes villains of the story. And I loved that. So to be able to kind of take these themes of trauma and justice and revenge and vigilantism and then do them from a perspective of maybe all the women aren't as nice as we like to pretend them they are, right? Is something I really enjoyed.
That's one thing I really love about your books is that you really do explore the depth of the female person, character, whatever, because sometimes right off what's going on in their heads, and then sometimes like this one, you had me, and I'll get to the question later, you really had me kind of having doubts. So
yeah,
it's and I like that, and I think that's why I'm so drawn to both of your books, is because you do have that perspective.
Oh, thank you.
So then the next question is, what do you think draws readers, and women readers in particular, so avidly to the domestic suspense genre?
Right, it's all of it, right? It's all of suspense. And I read true crime. Women are the main readers and watchers of all of those things. And I think there's a couple things. So much is out of control, right? And there's some sense that if you read it or if you watch it, if it's true crime, thrillers, whatever it is, that there is some sense of control in those, right? Like the mystery, something's going to happen with the villain, right? We're not going to end the book with the serial killer killing 900 people on the last page and that's it, right? Like there's closure. There's some sense of closure, which in real life we don't get in a lot of these cases. And I remember, recently there was the young woman who died, who was killed in Yosemite, Gabby Petito, I think her name is. I remember reading a director, somebody wrote, stop telling people that it's not okay to watch these things or read these things, because it makes you more aware. If the next Gabby Petito thinks for 5 seconds, maybe I shouldn't get in that van and go with that guy for 9 months, like maybe that's not the best one. That's excellent, like excellent. And I do think there is that sense of, can we really control it? Can I really stop the serial killer? No, I'll be the person hiding in the closet. Really, I will.
Thank
with
you.
like a hanger. I've, the zombie apocalypse and those kind of books, or TV and any of that. I watch it and I'm always like, I would die on day 3. I would. I'd be like with a can of soup in my closet, just sitting there. But I do like the idea that. And I do think the idea that women, when we read these, when we watch these, we feel some sense of control, and we feel some sense of, okay, in my head, that would be a red flag for me. It wasn't for her, but I think that would be a red flag for me. And if it wasn't before, it is now. And I think that's a really good thing.
Yes, the awareness. Yeah, and going back to the zombie apocalypse, I would never open the door, so there would be no story.
You can come sit in my closet with me.
Yeah.
We'll just sit there.
You and I can share your soup.
There you go.
So, when writing, how did you create doubt with your main character, Lisa? Because I really did not know if she was going to be a reliable character or not, and you balanced it so well. So, how did you craft her? So you left me questioning. It was just fascinating.
Thank you. That's such a relief to hear. I know that there are people who don't love unreliable narrators, and I do understand that. And I have read some stuff where I'm like, oh, I'm not sure that worked for me. Like, if you're in the person's point of view, and on page 350, they're like, oh yeah, I did kill my aunt. How have I not thought of that for 350? That's not realistic to me, right? So when I was thinking about Alyssa, I wanted somebody who really did have this life that from the outside, people would say, she's got this nice veterinarian husband. She's got this, beautiful historic house on the main line and outside of Philadelphia. She's got this cute kid, all this kind of stuff. But the reality is it's never looks like that from the inside, right? Like, that's not, I was a divorce lawyer. That is not how the insides look. And so it was, how do I make her feel like she's protected when she's in this bubble, but she's not otherwise? And for her, what has happened is there's a traumatic thing happened 11 months before the book started. And she does not do a great job of watching out for her own mental health. And I think some moms do this, right? Because they're so busy taking care of the household and making sure the husband's happy or the partner's happy and the kids are doing what they need to do, and that they sometimes they don't take care of themselves, right? And she's not fully taking care of herself. And she's also has what I think a lot of people have, which is, when it comes to mental health, instead of saying, if I broke an arm, nobody would think twice if I wore a cast and if I got help and if I went to the doctor. But when it comes to mental health, the stigma has gotten better, but there's still a stigma, right? There's still some sense of, couldn't you just be happier? Couldn't you just smile more? Why don't you walk, go outside and get some fresh air? I mean, that's not answers to somebody who has had a traumatic experience or somebody who's dealing with depression or anxiety. So I wanted to kind of, from her perspective, deal with that, where somebody is struggling to figure it out on her own, how she gets through kind of the trauma, and is so worried about the people around her thinking, you should be over it by now, right? Like, you should just be better. Why are you still upset? And I do think that's kind of a realistic thing that's happened. So in the middle of all of that, you drop, oh my goodness, where's my best friend, and who is my brother-in-law really? So you can kind of throw her off base. And in my head, it was really clear kind of who was doing what and where she was. But I wanted to play with the idea of gaslighting. Is is this really happening, or is somebody really trying to throw her off the game, like intentionally hurting her in a way that she cannot function the way she needs to.
Yeah, and as a
it
reader,
was
you
hard.
don't know. Yeah,
You
yeah.
don't know.
You don't know. You don't know, because I'm seeing things where she's making progress and then she takes a couple of steps backwards.
Yeah.
So that has me as a reader going back and forth. So well done.
Good, thank you.
And then, so I want to talk about your whiteboard.
Did you see it?
Yeah, I see it's all nice and clean, ready for the next project.
Oh, that is only because I finished a book yesterday. So I cleaned that an hour ago because I had oh no, I cleaned it an hour ago because that was a mess up until, yeah, just a little bit.
Okay. Can you describe how you use your whiteboard? Because I've heard how you kind of divide it up. And
yeah, when I start writing, what normally happens is I'm very lucky. I love my editor at William Morrow at HarperCollins, and we worked together back when I was writing romantic suspense under a different name. So what happens is I've been able to kind of pitch her a story idea, and it's like, okay, go do that story idea. That's what we're going to buy. And all I know is like this much in my head, right? I know I've written a synopsis, which I never looked at again. She knows I know when. So, but I pretty much know like the first scene, but I don't know who the people are. I don't know a lot of times, how am I going to put this together? You know, like how am I going to put the pieces of Alyssa together? Who are these other people? So for a couple of weeks at the beginning, what I do is on that whiteboard, I play with kind of characters, who I think they are, who I think I need, those kind of things. I get that kind of set in my head. I take a picture of it, I erase it, and then I divide the board into kind of what I know, what the reader knows, what my main character knows, and what the so-called villain knows, and then start playing with how and when am I going to let these pieces drop, so that everybody starts to know everything. And that's what's normally on the board. And I sit at my desk. I'm at my desk right now, and I sit at my desk and I use the board and a notebook. This is the notebook for the book I just wrote. And I am constantly kind of making notes, adjusting, etc. And once I have an idea of what I think the book is, who I think the people are, I just start writing. I let myself start to write. And what has happened for me is I've thought it through. So I have a general outline. It's starting to change. I'm moving it around. And then as I write, kind of the book comes into my head and I start to see it. And then I can write all kinds of stuff. And as you can see from this poor, lovely notebook, I write myself notes. I have sticky notes. It's an ugly process, but somehow out of all of that, a book gets done. I don't know how. I really don't, but it does. I'm always amazed. I remember once a long time ago, there's an author named Suzanne Brockman, and she writes romantic suspense. She was one of the first people to write like Navy SEALs as heroes. And I was a baby author, and I sat in like a talk she was giving, and she said, before I can write a book, I have to write a 90-page outline. And I was like, and I'm done. I'm just going to leave the room, right? Like I can't conceive of that. But different authors have different ways to get it on the page. Right now, for 3 books, this has worked for me. And I spend a lot of time in this room kind of thinking through and shifting around, and between that and a laptop, that's how it gets done.
Then did you edit a lot out of the replacement life, or because you kind of have a outline or a plot line, most of what you put in, you have to do minimal editing, or do you have to edit whole scenes? Or
I edit I revise as I go along.
Okay.
So I will write, and the chapters aren't super long. So I'll write a chapter, and then I'll go through and I'll revise the chapter, and then I'll write a little bit for the next day for the next chapter. Then I'll come in and I'll go over that chapter I already wrote, and I revise again. And I do, it's the way that kind of continuity gets in my head. Like, you know, does this make sense over 400 pages? You know, it might make sense in little pieces in your head, but does it make sense? So I'm revising pretty much every day, some piece, you know, because I'm sleeping in at 3 a.m. I wish I were kidding. At 3 a.m. It's like, that's how I should do it. And I've learned that I cannot in that moment just go to sleep. I have to pick up my cell phone next to me and email myself. And in the morning, I'm like, okay, that was brilliant at 3 a.m. I wonder what that is now. But yeah, so by the time I'm done with the book, like I literally just finished, so many, like 350 of the pages had been revised over and over and over again. Because as I get to 270, I'm like, that's how that chapter should have gone. So I'm going to do it now. Some people write the whole thing. Like I hear words like, I wrote a first draft and I'm going to go do a second draft. And that's like, I don't even understand, because that's just not how it works for me. But for some people, that's how it is. They can't interrupt their own writing to revise. For me, I have to revise as I go along.
Okay, interesting. And then how I know that you wrote romance and suspense genre. They're two different genres, but how are they similar? Which to me seems kind of counterintuitive.
Yeah, I think how they're similar is, I think of kind of genre fiction, popular fiction, you know, and I'm talking about mystery, sci-fi, fantasy, horror, romance. When you write that, as opposed to writing literary works, when you write genre fiction, you are writing to certain expectations that the audience has, the readership has. Like, you wouldn't write a whodunit and never say whodunit, right? Like, because your reader would be like, what just happened here? And that's how it works for romance too. In romance, the reader expectation is you will put these people through whatever you put them through, and somehow these crazy kids will have a happy ending, right? And you have to get there, and people have no idea how hard that actually can be to get them there. I mean, if you think about it, it can be very difficult. So in the same way that, like, all of the craft stuff is the same, right? Like how to put a sentence together, how to put a scene together, how to hook a reader at the end of one scene to want to read the next, right? Point of view, all of those things. Those are craft principles. And whatever you write, those are your tools, right? Like the author's tools. You have to know how to use that. If you go from genre to genre, the question is, do you know what the expectations are in this genre? And can you take those craft rules that you know and skills that you know and do it? And I also think you have to love it, right? Like I wouldn't write sci-fi or fantasy. I am absolutely amazed by people who do. Like the world building that they somehow manage to fit in with everything else that's going on with the floor. I think it's an extraordinary talent. It's not my favorite thing to read. When I love what I've read, but it's not what I think of when I first pick up something. But it's like, I wouldn't just start writing a fantasy because I'm like, I know how to write a book. That's not, you know how to write a book, but you probably don't know how to write that kind of book. And I think for me, I had written a lot of romantic suspense. So a lot of the idea of kind of danger, ticking clocks, pacing, how do we keep the readers wanting to be like, what's happening? You have to do in romantic suspense that you do in thrillers. And I really did grow up reading mysteries and thrillers. It's funny because stuff like when I took the bar exam, when you take a bar exam, it's over the summer, you know, you've graduated and now you've got everything depends on this test. So I was working in the morning, I was taking bar classes at night. The only thing, I allowed myself 1 hour a day to read. And for reasons I cannot tell you, the only author I could read was Jonathan Kellerman, right? He has a series, Psychologist. It's the only thing I could read. And I loved it. It was my 1 hour day and he kept me focused. And I feel so bad because ever since I passed the bar, I'm like, now I cannot look at the Keller book, and it's Kellerman book, and it's not him, it's me. But,
It's reflective of the stress and the angst and all that wrapped into them taking the
Yes.
bar. It's like eating ice
Yes.
cream and then being sick of it and then not ever eating it
Exactly.
again. Yeah. Yeah.
Exactly. But I can remember times in my life when certain things happen, like, get my wisdom teeth out. I was reading, I have no short-term memory at all. And I can remember I was reading a book by Philip Margolin, right? I don't know how, but somehow, so I'm very attached to the genre to begin with. And I really wanted to, I love romantic suspense. I still love romance. I love romantic suspense. But I wanted to write some books where I didn't have to have a happy ever after. Like I wasn't feeling very happy ever after for the last couple of years. I don't know why, but I wasn't. So this gave me that chance to write kind of a different kind of book, still focused on a woman. And yeah.
And you do sprinkle a little bit of romance. I mean, it's maybe not the lovey-dovey,
Yeah.
Across the cafe, I know I'm going to marry you, but you do have that kind of a unit,
Yeah.
whether, even with Pretty Little Wife, she was very strong and, she was
Yes.
still married.
Yes.
So, yeah. And then that's a nice segue into what are a couple of your favorite authors, and then why those authors?
When it comes to thrillers, first of all, any book, any thriller that traps people somewhere, like in the Agatha Christie and Then There Were None kind of feeling, right? Like takes people and traps them on a boat at a ski lodge somewhere that they can't get, fishing village, whatever it is, and they can't get out. I'm going to read that book. I can guarantee you I'm going to read that book. There is something about taking people, flawed and perfect as we all are, throwing us together and adding danger. I love what authors do with like how who you really are slips out a little bit and it's not that pretty. I love those books. So that's like Lucy Foley has written two, I think it's The Hunting Party and I can't remember the second one. Like she's written a couple, but a lot of people write those books. They're great. Ruth Ware has written them. I think I love Jennifer Hillier, who writes thrillers. And part of the reason I think I really like her books is it feels like she just went for it, right? Like she has a book called The Butcher, where a guy goes home and he thinks his dad is a serial killer. Like he thinks, like he starts to put together, I think dad was, and she doesn't, there's no like soft, that she just goes for it. And there's something very kind of freeing about like reading that. I love Lisa Jewell. She writes a lot of what I would call domestic thrillers. I think she's fantastic. And one of the things I love about thrillers is there just always seems to be like this new group of like somebody will burst onto the scene. A lot of them are, Reese Witherspoon's, picks. If you look at them, like half are these female thriller writers, right? New and I love that. I really do.
Excellent. Well, I'd like to invite Julie back and we can open up some questions from the audience, or I've got some more questions to do. So
and I've got a ton of questions too, so we might be here all night.
That's fine. I'll go get a martini.
We can do that.
Yeah, she's got her coffee. I'll go get a martini.
The first one
I'm
I
ready.
have to ask Darby, because I didn't really even notice this when we were first talking, but the ladder behind you that looks like it goes up to someplace a little creepy. Okay.
I know. I actually love doing these things in this room because I know people are like, "What is that?
What does she have in the attic there?"
This room, for the people who we've lived, I think in San Diego like 14 years. So when we bought this house, I saw that and I was like, anybody want to explain what this is? But I think this was a kid's bedroom. And what they did is they carved like this space upstairs out of the eaves where there are lights and there's a carpet up there where you could see some teen kid who's like had enough of the baby brother or baby sister, you know, goes up the ladder and just hangs out there. Now we keep suitcases up there, but I wish
There's
I
no
could tell
like
you.
creepy dead bodies or somebody being held
wish.
hostage up there.
So she says. So she says.
I wish there was some great story, but when we got here, like parts of the house were painted this scarlet red and we changed it, but I'm like, no, that is staying scarlet red. It just needs it, I think. Yeah, I know.
I love it. Yeah. No,
Yeah, it's
it almost became a point of distraction to me when I was
I
watching this.
know.
I was just like, I almost burst in. I was like, I gotta know what that ladder is called.
Could you just stop and explain what that is?
Just like,
I know.
Time out. Let me figure out what that ladder.
It's how I keep you entertained during these things.
Like a little bit of suspense in that. Well, we do have a question from Patricia. Hi, Patricia. So she would like to know with what you were talking about, and I don't know if you can answer this or not, but what will the next book be about? Will it be set in Philadelphia? Will there be a sequel to The Replacement Wife? And then you answered this last question, which she said, why did you shift from romance to thriller? So you already answered that. But next book and Philadelphia and sequel. Those are the...
One of the things, you know, when I wrote romantic suspense, one of the things readers love, and I love as a romantic suspense reader, is series books, you know, like where it's like six people in a special ops group and each book focuses on a different person, right? So I did that for years. So when I started writing thrillers, I'm like, they will be standalone books. They will not be part of a series. I'm just going to do. So in my head, for the first two and for the third, when I wrote them, it's like everything I want to say about these people and their lives is going to be here. And while I think everything is wrapped up, I will not be unhappy if a reader ends and is like, but I wonder what would they do that, because that's how, like, if you watch true crime, that's how it works, right? Like you don't get the and they lived happily ever after. That's not how it works. So I try to wrap up every loose end that I can think of, but still leave you with the sense of I don't know, like is that couple gonna make it? I don't know. So the book I just finished was my third thriller. Right now it's tentatively called The Last Invitation. You know, these titles go through all different kinds of stuff. And it is what in my head, like Pretty Little Wife, I think of as the wife book. The Replacement Wife, I think of as kind of the brother-in-law book. This book is not a domestic thriller. It's a psychological thriller. And it is there was a Michael Douglas movie years ago that called The Star Chamber, but the Star Chamber is the idea of a group of people get together and decide what justice is and secretly mete it out. And that's what the third book is. It is a group of professional women, and I'm not giving anything away. The very first chapter is like a page and a half long, and you can tell that the group is meeting and that they're not playing cards. There's something.
It's not bunco.
No, not now. No.
Not a book club.
So, but
bunco and wine drinking isn't happening.
No, but I love the idea of what if a group of women, professional women with like a lot of resources and a lot, are angry enough that they say, if the justice system isn't going to handle it, we'll handle it. And
Kind of
that's
like
what the third book is.
like a little antithesis of like Handmaid's Tale, maybe.
Yes.
Just like a
Yes,
little
flip it inside
opposite,
out.
just flipping that around a little bit.
Yes. So it was great fun to write. But yeah, it's kind of, think of it as the women are really mad kind of.
We kind of are.
Yeah. Yes.
It's
Yes.
like, And
Yes.
Patricia says, that sounds good. And she says, thanks for explaining the ladder too.
Sure.
It was driving her crazy too.
I know. I'm gonna like post photos of it on Instagram because I think people are probably wondering.
Yeah, it's like, what's the ladder? So, okay, so your true crime obsession, which
Yes.
I think we all, I mean, I do
Yeah.
the same thing. I'm like Dateline and 2020 and all those.
Yeah.
Did you ever consider writing true crime?
I didn't. I think it's one of those things that, when you start writing something, it becomes a job, right? Like, and what I love about true crime is that I have a little bit of distance. Like I can do the thing where I'm not dissecting how somebody put a story together. What I'm really doing is dissecting, did he kill his mother? Right? Like
the intent. It's like,
yes. But I read like Anne Rule, like anything Anne Rule had ever written. I've written, You'll Be Gone in the Dark. I loved, so I
it's
love
a totally different kind of writing. Yeah.
It is because what happens, and you're going to be like, she didn't tell. What happens is when you write fiction, like I decide, right? Like I decide how bad he is, how bad she is, what happens to everybody. But in real life thing, I don't get to do that, right? So it's a very, and I think one of the reason I love reading Anne Rule books is she wrote it in a way that it felt like fiction. Right.
Yes.
So I wasn't like, this is dry and now some psychologist is doing something.
And the detective said this and yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah. Oh no, I was cracking up because when you first started talking about like with the wife that's like, he had come to find out that his wife died, that he was married to. I was just like, those stories just are crazy.
Those are crazy. And what's really bizarre is that when I was watching these, like 3 of the men had the last name Peterson. And I was like, what is happening here?
I know.
What is happening? I don't understand.
Yeah, it's crazy. I mean, it really is. I mean, it is a little bit, I don't even know what to even call that, but yeah. So.
Well, and I'm sure like you love you love someone and the first person died, like, it's an accident. She fell on the stairs. So you say it's an accident. But you just have to think at some point with the second one, you'd be like, I don't know about that.
Really, how did she fall down those stairs? What was that push that happened at the top of that?
Exactly. I've joked with my husband. I'm like, look, people know I'm afraid of heights, so you can't push me off a cliff.
Right. Yep.
People know I have a thing with open water, so I'm not going to be scuba diving. You can't mess up my scuba gear. So you have a limited course.
Yep. Oh, my husband thinks that I'm watching him to bump him off because he's always like, "You're a little too obsessed with these things, like the antifreeze poisoning or whatever."
It's amazing, but isn't it amazing what? Like again, I was a divorce lawyer, and I was a contested. Like one of the main things I did was contested custody cases. These people are not at their best. I'm just going to say that. So, but I'm always amazed at what people do to each other, especially in the domestic sense, because you say to yourself, you walked down an aisle and made a promise, and how did that end up here? It's just a fascinating, horrifying thing to me. Yeah.
No, and I love the brother. I love that you are like looking at like family members and the brother because it's just like, I can't do sometimes. So it's okay, like, how creepy are you really?
I know. I have had more than one.
I'm thinking you could probably be.
I've had more than one person say to me, do you have a brother-in-law? I'm like, I don't. I have 2 brothers and 2 sisters-in-law, so I'm free to do whatever I want.
You can do whatever you want. Although maybe a brother does have no. Denise, what question did you not get answered that you wanted to throw out there? You got something else?
Yeah, well, I'd like to know, let's see, where did it go? When did you know that I know you were a divorce lawyer, so when did you decide, okay, I'm done with the divorce lawyering, I want to be a writer, and how did you morph that into becoming a writer?
Well, this is a testament to we all need to have self-confidence, because I was always an avid reader, right? And my parents, like, there was not like, oh, we don't have money. If it was a book, they'd figure out like I could have it. And it didn't dawn on me. I created stories in my head. You know, I had Barbies, I had whole lives with them when I was little, right? Like, but it never dawned on me, oh, you should become a writer. Like I went to school for newspaper journalism. Again, very different thing than fiction writing. And it just didn't dawn on me, you should be a writer, because I think looking back now, that seemed like such an impossible thing. Like, oh, I don't have the talent. I don't have that. Like, I can't do it. So I think it's just kind of gets buried, right? And then I don't know, 30 years old. I was in a law firm, and I was an associate. So you were like working all these hours trying to become a partner. And I read all the time. And then what happened was I started writing kind of little stories on the side, hobby, nothing you would ever want to read. But a romance author, her name is Lori Foster, did this contest off her website way back, like in the 2005 range. And you would send in 3 pages, just 3 pages, and she would pick her favorite 20. Like, she got hundreds and hundreds. She would pick her favorite 20, and she sent them to her editor at Kensington. And I was like, you know, why not? Again, didn't have the self-confidence I had any talent. Sent it in. I'm picked as one of the finalists. And it's interesting, if anybody reads women's fiction or romance, if you know Sylvia Day, who's like an international bestseller, she and I were both picked as finalists on the same year. And so what happens is the work went right to an editor. And she called each of the finalists and said what she liked and didn't like. And her name was Kate Duffy. She's since died, but she was like this amazing editor in New York. And she said to me, one day I'm going to be your editor, just not today. You've got to want it, and you've got to work a lot harder. And 18 months later, I submitted something to her, and she said, you did it. I'm going to buy that. But, you know, it's like, right? So it's this alchemy of luck, and an opportunity that dropped on, and I took the opportunity. Like, we all have to pick those opportunities up. I think most of them were like, whatever. And then somebody cared enough to spend a little bit of time on the phone with me to say, I think I see talent. 3 pages, I can't quite tell, but I think I see talent. Put these 3 pages away, write something else. And I did. And the second thing I sent her, she said, you do have talent. This still isn't it. Put it away, write something else. So I didn't get stuck in that thing where I was writing the same book for 103 years, right?
Right.
So it's like this luck, opportunity, and then this incredible thing that happened that gave me the confidence to say, maybe I do want this, right? So the first 3 books I wrote while I was becoming a partner in a law firm. And I sold, and I went into I had just made partner, and I went into my partners, and I was like, okay, here's the thing, you know, you don't know, right? Like, you don't know how the room's gonna, and they were like, this is amazing. We are so proud of you. And, you know, it's just like, and my husband is incredibly supportive, and my family's supportive. So everything I was incredibly lucky, had incredible opportunities that shortcut a process that could have been very, very long to get started, right? Because I think a lot of people are like, this is taking too long. It's too much of my family's time. It's too much of whatever. I'm not going to do it. Mine was much, much shorter, and I feel nothing but gratitude and very lucky that that's how my career started, because I don't know, it may not, right? Like, it may have been easier to be like, I'm a partner now, I'm just going to just sit in my office and do whatever. And yeah.
That's amazing.
Absolutely,
that is amazing. Because is it during the time, did you like take classes? Did you take creative writing class? Did you do anything like that? Or did you just kind of self-teach
I self-taught. And I think in my head, what I was saying was, I spent, you know, to be a lawyer, like you got to do 7 years, and you got to learn everything. You got to take all these ethics classes. I was like, I don't want writing to be a chore. Little did I know. I don't want writing to be a
Show us that
chore.
notebook again.
I was gonna say, I'm so naive. And but I didn't want it to be like I was afraid, like when Suzanne Brockman said 90-page outline, if somebody had said to me, and that's what you had to do, I would have just gotten up and left the room, because I'm like, that's not how my brain works.
Right.
So what ended up happening was I wrote, and I kind of learned as I went along. And then what you figure out is that if you are a storyteller, if you're somebody who likes storyteller, there's like a way stories unfold, right? Like, and you then go and look at the craft books, and you're like, oh, all of these experts call it different things, but I can see, like, I understand.
It's all the same thing, right?
Exactly.
Right.
And then I actually ended up, this is pre-pandemic, I taught fiction writing at UCSD in their what's it called? The extension program.
The extension program, yeah.
And that's really the first time where I had to look at all of these craft books, and I'm like, oh, okay. But
I better start calling this the right thing.
No, it has a name. But you know, I think sometimes, like I would say to the class, you can read you just have to find the thing that works for you. And maybe none of these work for you, but when you were in Girl Scouts and you went camping and you all sat around the fire telling a story, nobody told a boring story, right? There wasn't too much exposition. There wasn't too much dialogue. There weren't unnecessary characters. You knew how to tell the story about the guy who escaped, who had the hook on his hand. Every kid knows that story, right? You knew how to tell exactly. You know how to tell a story. And I think sometimes we can get in our own way, right? And then the story becomes harder because we think we have to do, and sometimes it's storytelling. Let me tell the story. I can build, I can fix whatever I've written, but I got to figure out how to get the story out.
And that's what the professionals, the editors, the whoever that is, helps you make it better.
Yes,
but
exactly.
If there's not a good story there, and if you try and make it something that it's not, it's like, no.
It's not going to work.
No. Oh my God, this was so much fun. I had so much fun meeting you.
I did too. Thank you both so much.
I know. Denise, thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah. Well, have a good New Year. Anybody got good New? Well, what are we doing in the middle of COVID? We're probably going to sit here and drink champagne, right?
I'm supposed to be in Hawaii. My in-laws live there, and our trip was canceled because this is why we moved it to 6 o'clock, because of me landing. But I'm just like, I didn't stay in for 2 years to blow it here, hopefully at the end, right?
Right,
and
at the finish line. Yeah, we're at the finish line, and it's just like, I kind of feel the same
but
way.
you would have missed this if I had been in Hawaii.
Completely would have missed that, and it has fascinated all of us. It's like,
I know, you're like, where does she live? I
was like, I want to know what's up in that space right there. I mean, we're talking some crime here. Where's the brother-in-law? Is the brother really the murderer? Or is he up there tied up somewhere?
I mean, I've more than once thought you could put something up there and then just go over it, and it would just look like the ceiling, and nobody would ever know. Yeah, fiction for fiction, of course, not real life. Fiction.
Really? No. Anyways, thank you both. Have a wonderful New Year, everybody. The Replacement Wife, Warwick's. We love the support and hope everybody has a great New Year.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Bye, everybody.
Bye.